Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to welcome you to our webinar. On this day, I recognize some people who were also at our info day in late January. So I'm glad to see you again. I'm welcoming you on the behalf of the Lieutenant Colonel Briche, who unfortunately is not here currently, but this is not a problem. We would like to talk to you about Shuttle, which is our project. So, as you know, Shuttle is financed by the H2020 program, where 8 institutes and forensic labs have teamed up to develop through a PCP a toolkit which will make more objective the microtrace analysis. So, the main partner are the French Ministry of Interior from France, the NFIM from Netherlands, Chimea from Greece, LTEC from Lithuania, PJs from Portugal, Arctic from France, and MOPS INP from Israel, and also a university from Amsterdam, Netherlands. I will just present our concept and our vision of the toolkit that we want. And to do so, I choose to present the concept through a fictional case. So, hello, I'm Sophia Berkani from the IRCGN, which is the forensic lab of the French Gendarmerie. I'm working with the coordinator, Lieutenant Colonel Gregory Briche, who is the coordinator of the Shuttle project. And, I will introduce the vision and the concept of Shuttle right now. Okay, I think you can see my screen. So, to do so, I choose to introduce the vision of Shuttle through a fictional case. So let's consider the following scenario. Jewelry was robbed during the night. A woman witnessed the entire scene, and the description given by this witness and the evidence is collected on the crime scene led the police to 5 suspects. The police officer took some clauses of the suspects and gave them to the expert in microtrace analysis to check if there is a link between the suspect and the crime scene. So microtrace is basically what's left or exchanged at the crime scene during physical contact. It's usually caused by the perpetrator coming into contact and leaving behind object. It helps to make connection between a crime scene suspect or a crime scene or smaller side. The analysis of a pioneer in the forensic science. So Lockhart came up with the basic principle of the forensic science, stating that every contact leaves traces. So let's go back to our fictional case. A jewelry was robbed during the night, and a woman witnessed the entire scene. The description given by the witness and the evidence collected on the crime scene led the police to 5 suspects. The police officer took some clauses of the suspect and gave them to the expert in microtrace analysis to check if there is a link between the crime scene and the suspect. So, when the expert gets the clauses, he has to collect the microtraces by tape lifting, then scan the tape and determine which microtraces are relevant. And if he found something relevant, he has to extract the trace for further analysis. As you noticed, everything leans on the expert eyes, and there are some shortcomings to do that. It's time-consuming to scan all of the tapes for the expert, and there is a risk to damage the microtrace by extracting them and to miss something due to the damage. So we need to enhance the current methodology. We need more objectivity and a method less hazardous for the microtraces. We need something like Shuttle. So what is Shuttle? Shuttle, it's a short for Scientific High Throughput Unified Toolkit for Trace Analysis by Forensic Laboratories in Europe. As I said during the introduction, it's a financed project by the H2020 program, where 8 European forensic laboratories and institutes have teamed up to develop a toolkit which will render more objective and scientific the trace analysis. How we would like the toolkits to do that? By combining tools which will help to solve the current difficulties. I will briefly describe it because you will get further information in the presentation of Mr. Van der Witt. So we would like the tape changed to be a tape with a microscopic grade tape to use it directly on the toolkit. The toolkit will consist in an automated microscope which will acquire microtraces images and do spectrometric analysis. Then an algorithm will process the images acquired and classify the different types of traces present. Every data obtained will be compiled in a database with a search algorithm which will help to generate, which will help to generate the pattern recognition procedure, allowing the searching for similar samples in the database. So the purpose of making such a toolkit is to make a powerful and versatile toolkit which solves the major issues in forensic science and also improves the information exchange and the synergy between the different criminal research laboratories to fight against the international crime. So I thank you for your attention. Here you can see the different partners involved in the Shuttle Consortium, and I will leave Mr. Van der Witt for the next presentation speaking. Thank you.
So it's my turn now. I'll switch on the camera and the microphone. I've been giving quite a number of presentations up to date, but not yet webinars, so it feels slightly uncommon on this side of our virtual room. Hope I'm understandable. If not, please let me know. I'm having the conversations in my screen now, so if you have any questions, any remarks, please let me know. Hard to understand. Sound very saturated. Your mic is too close. Oh, sorry. Not sure what to do here. Sound here seems all right. I'll put the sound a bit further on. This is the same as we did in last week in testing.
Yeah, I mean, you should avoid the fabric to touch the mic. The mic should not be too close from your clothes, you know? It's just the thing.
Not be too close to...
It's okay. It should be
It's okay.
fine.
Well, I'll just continue. Please let me know. It's very funny to look at my own face in the screen here. So after a while, I think it's nice for you to know who is talking to you. So I'll keep it on for a while and then switch it off. My name is Jaap van der Weert. I'm part of the Netherlands Forensic Institute. I'm part of the Shuttle Consortium. And it's an honor for me to introduce you to the Shuttle basic thoughts, the Shuttle philosophy, and some early bits of the specifications that we'll set during the tenders. So what will I talk about today? is basically our current procedure. What is the current procedures in the laboratories? Then I'll talk about some limitations of those current procedures. I'll go into the shuttle toolkits, and I'll have the first glance of the shuttle requirements. So what is our current procedure? Well, actually, when we get something in our lab, we get, for example, this vest, a garment. We are thinking on many things. Are there microtraces? That's of course very important. But also, what's the general state? Is it very worn? Is it very old? Is it new? Are there any damages? Is somebody been stabbed, or is there blood on it? Whatever. What's the known material? Is it polyester vest? Is it polyacrylic? Whatever. So there are many things that we think. But all those things, all those questions are based on the garment, on the item we get into our lab. And this is basically, this sounds very logic. If you would do this if you would get something like this, these are the questions you would be interested in. But in fact, those questions are quite different from what you see on the television when you look at CSI or one of those television series. What people talk about there is the nice big instruments that the forensic science institutes have. So on the screen here you see all kind of things, the PCR kind of things, the right bottom, right top, or the mass spectrometry, or SEM, or FTIR, all those nice instruments. And of course we have them. We have those in our lab, and other forensic labs in the consortium also have these kind of instruments. But they're not the main time obligation that we have. They're only part of the job. These are very advanced instruments, but the main instrument, the single most important instrument we have in forensic science is still the old-fashioned microscope. And this is a very good instrument. This is a very powerful instrument. It's a subjective instrument. It requires that somebody is sitting at the microscope. Of course, somebody has to look through the microscope. This is a good instrument. As of yet, forensic science cannot do without microscopes. They are very, very important. And this is a type of microscope within our lab. We do a lot of comparisons. So we have a sample and another sample, and we want to know, are these the same? So we look through a comparison microscope, as you see here, actually consisting of two separate microscopes, and what you see through the oculars is a combined image of both. So there's a kind of gap between what's common practice in forensic institutes, and on the other side, what's the knowledge, the impression that's been displayed through television series. So going a bit further into the lab, I'll switch off my camera. I'm fed up of looking at myself. Look at the screen. You can still see the images. So most important thing is still there. But looking at a garment, the garment I showed you before. If you want to look at small traces that may be present on a garment, as Sophia told, that may be present on a garment that may point towards a suspect of the guy who killed this lady or who assaulted her, whatever, we need to collect those traces. We need to recover them. Within different groups, within different forensic groups, there are different ways to recover traces. So if you're interested in DNA, interested in skin cells, maybe somebody touched this lady, the garment of this lady, and left some of his skin cells on her garment, you might use stubs, as you see on the right of the screen here. Those are consist of a SEM stub with a little double-sided tape on top, and you can use that to collect skin cells. If you're interested in fibers, then you probably use other kinds of tapes. We use the Nation, other people use the high-tech JLR tapes, whatever. There are several kinds of tapes that are being used in different forensic labs. And you just stick them onto the garment and collect traces. And that's not a single trace at the moment. What you see here on the screen is an example of a tape. And you see there's loads of fibers on that tape. Somebody has to look through the microscope, look at those tapes and find the correct traces that are interesting for the case at hand. And that's not the only thing. Then when somebody found interesting traces, there's next investigation. So we have the tape lift, as it's normally called, the tape lift. We do tape scanning to find the traces. But then we want to go to another microscope, the comparison microscope. So we have to isolate the things because the current tapes are not good enough for high magnification microscopy. We isolate them. And if you want to go further to microspectrometry, then glass slides are not good enough in the same way. So we again isolate the traces, go to the next technique. So this is very not complicated, very time-consuming technique. So this is the standard procedure for many labs with regards to fibers. If you want to go to glass, normally people don't use tapes. They can use tapes, but normally people use a vacuum cleaner or they beat their garments. So take a stick and beat on the garment to recover the traces. And again, you will not have a single trace. You will have a complete mess of traces, normally consisting of a lot of sand, a lot of fibers, a lot of dust, a lot of things, and hopefully, if you're looking for glass, a little bit of glass. All these things are very subjective. All the microscopy is subjective. Somebody's looking through the microscope, not only subjective, but also time-consuming. And there are some implications of their subjectivity. We are very dependent on experts. In forensic science, experts are very important. People have to know what they're looking at, have to have all kind of detailed knowledge on the traces they are investigating. And of course, with all those knowledge, people are quite expensive. And if they have to spend a lot of time on traces because they have so many traces, that makes the process of forensic investigation very expensive. Also because many of the investigations are subjective, so somebody's looking through the microscope, it's very difficult to make databases, because databases, you could store impressions or you could store observations in databases, but they are not as accurate as people see them. So you can store as a color of a trace blue, but there are several kinds of blue that we all call blue, but they are distinctly different. So it's very difficult to make databases based on subjective information, and because we don't have so many databases, or we don't have the right databases, it's very difficult to make numerical evidential value. In evidential value, there's always the question, well, maybe you have a match, maybe the traces you find on a suspect, they agree, they are completely the same in everything compared to the trace you collected from the victim. So we have a match between the victim and the suspect. But what does it say? If you look through a database with items or persons that are not related to the crime, do we find matches there as well? Is it possible that the match we found is based on chance, old-fashioned chance? So that's called the evidential value. What's the value of a match? What's the value of a result? I can make a nice comparison here in a running game, a running contest. So you see all these people here, they're running at a specific pace, and our question is, of course, which one is the fastest? Well, of course, that's easy to see. The one you see on the left of your screen, this guy is the fastest. That's clear, that's easy, and that's what basically we would see in forensic science through a microscope. But every time we want to replicate this measurement, every time we want to change something, to look at other runners, to repeat it tomorrow. Maybe we want to study how people behave in a couple of weeks. We have to collect all the people again. We have to collect all the runners again to be able to find out who is fastest today. We cannot compare, if we only look at this, something like this, we cannot compare my time today to Sophia's time, which she ran yesterday, whatever. In order to do that, we need two additional things, and these are symbolized here. First, we need an environment. We need an environment that's fixed, so we have to make a clear appointment on what distance do we want to run. There's quite a difference between, well, let's run for 10 kilometers or let's run for 400 meters. Of course, that's a difference. And the other thing is, we need to measure. We need a stopwatch, a time control. If we can agree on those aspects, so the environment and the measurement, then we can set a standard. And of course, if we have such a standard, we can check which one is fastest. Of course, we can just time all the different runners, but we also can check a runner that runs today with the time that was run a year ago, even the time that was run by a guy who has been dead for years. Am I faster? Am I slower? We can compare that as long as we have the environment and we have the measurement. So we would like a bit of those kind of environment and analysis for forensic science. And of course, people are very busy. They're always busy with cases and always busy with reporting and always busy with the microscopes. Luckily, something changed. The French Ministère de l'Intérieur took the lead in forming a consortium, the Shuttle Consortium. So they contacted a lot of people, formed the consortium, and sent in the shuttle proposal to the European Union, and it was accepted. So here's the grant number, if you want to check that. So the shuttle project is a pre-commercial procurement. I will talk about that only a few seconds. I'll leave that more to Maria, who will be giving the next talk. So what's a procurement? Shuttle is not in itself a research proposal. We as a consortium do not say, give us money and we will investigate things, we will make things, we will hire PhDs, we will hire postdoc students, whatever, and make the things. No, it's a procurement. We set the specifications, we say, write down, this is what we want, this is what we need in our process, and we bring that to the market as a tender. We ask different commercial parties, well, can you make this for us? Can you put in the development to give us this kind of toolkit, the machine, the toolkit, the method? So this is where the industry, where suppliers, where commercial parties are involved. They can be paid to do the development for us. That's as much as I will say about it. Questions on this? Please keep it to the next lecture given by Maria. She knows much more about this than I do. So, going into the details on automation. What's the basic of automation? Well, simple. We have a microscope, and we like our microscopes. We do everything with the microscope, but the microscope is subjective. So what if we just remove the oculus, so remove the piece you can look through from the microscope, and replace them with a camera? Well, simple, easy. That's the basic thought of automation, and effectively the basic thought of the whole shuttle toolkit. But of course, things are not as easy as that. There's a lot of things added. There's many implications. You need to replace. There's some comment from Marine.
It's just for one person who cannot see the slide. Don't worry about it.
All right, I won't worry about it. Sorry, I thought you were talking to me. There are many implications of this nice camera. Thank you, Adam. There are many implications that are derived from this choice: replace the Oculus by a camera. One is, well, of course, if you use a camera, you have objective data, but you don't have an objective method, because we will have many results. We'll have many images. We don't look through the microscope, but we acquire images, and somebody has to sit at a screen, at a computer, look through all these images and say, well, here's an interesting trace, there's an interesting trace, this is what I want to consider next. And of course, then you introduce the subjectivity again at the next level. So you don't want that. So we don't only want to automate the image acquisition, we also would like to automate the image processing. So a computer algorithm has to browse through all the images and say, there's something interesting here, this position, this coordinates, there's something interesting there, I think it's glass, there's something interesting at these coordinates, I think it's a fiber, there's something interesting there might be blood, etc. So this is a very important complication. We don't only need automated acquisition, also automated processing. We did some initial tests for that. It's possible. What we did here in a prototype, within NFI we built a prototype which is far from production, but still gives quite nice images. And what we did, we acquired some images, did some image processing, and asked the computer, well, give me the image, and if you think something is blood, make it green. If you think something is a fiber, make it red. And that's what you see here. So to the left of the screen is the original image. To the right, there's the overlay of the image classification, the trace classification scheme. Well, not perfect, but it works. It's a first start. So something like this, that's what we need. The next opportunity is the tape. If we go from microscopic slides to complete tape to automation of the observation, we would like high quality observation of large areas. So as you've seen, as I've told a couple of minutes ago, what we do, we tape an area, and once we find something interesting, we extract it from the tape and put it into glass slide for high magnification observation. But of course, this is not good if you want to go to automation, because then you want to look at everything through a high magnification, a very good image quality. So what we thought, we want tapes that are compatible with high quality, high magnification microscopy. So we want a tape that is clear, microscopically clear, and can be adjusted for large areas. So that's an opportunity. That's something that we don't do now at the moment, because we cannot in the lab analyze hundreds or thousands. Hundreds is possible, but not thousands or 10,000s of traces. That's just not possible. We don't have the time for that. But if there's an apparatus that does that, well, we could as well facilitate it and make the tape lift system so clear that the whole tape can be scanned at high quality microscopy. There's also some research in that. I'm afraid I can't show you the difference. What you see here on the left are wool fibers from a glass slide. So the glass slide is the basic golden standard. Glass slides give a very nice image and is used as a default in forensic labs at the moment. What you see on the right is a clear tape, so a tape that was selected by us to provide good image quality. And what you see, well, the image is pretty comparable. You see the scales on wool, you see a clear outline of the different things, and the presentation doesn't give you the old-fashioned images through tape. I'm sorry for that, but still there's a lot of improvement compared to the old. So there's a big start as well in that. Here we have a real challenge. As I told you, experts are very important in forensic science. And we should prevent that experts see the shuttle toolkit, the toolkit that's been developed, as a competition. You take our jobs, or you do everything that we used to do, and no, we should avoid that competition. There are many machines in forensic science, and experts do use machines. And with the right attitude, with the right impression, with the right communication, there will be the possibility that experts see the shuttle toolkit as a support. So we do not want to enter competition with the experts. It's not the expert is better or the machine is better. No, that's useless. No, we want to support. So the expert doesn't have time, shouldn't take time to do a scanning of a square meter of tape. No, he shouldn't. The toolkit should do the large area scanning and find the relevant traces and hand over to the expert what to do next. What is important here is the acquisition versus interpretation. So I told you the things on acquisition, the camera stuff, and the interpretation, so the image processing stuff. In an expert, those two systems, so acquisition, seeing, and interpretation, understanding, is all combined within the brain and the eyes of the expert. With a toolkit, with automation, those two can be separated. And that's very important. It might be that the toolkit, that the microscope, the automated microscope, is situated somewhere in a police laboratory, somewhere very far away from the expert. The toolkit might acquire images, upload them to a central server, do some initial interpretation, and then the expert from a completely different side of the country, or maybe from a completely different country, might go to those data and check the interpretation of the toolkit, or add or request more stuff, or whatever. So it's a very important part that acquisition and interpretation are separated. Talking about databases, of course, if you have a very nice toolkit and it works, and acquisition works, and interpretation works, we have objective data. We are not subjective anymore. Of course, there might be errors, there might be mistakes, etc. But we could validate those, and we could store our results in a database. Well, of course, that's a very good way to go to the next level, to facilitate maybe European or national collaboration. We could help each other within different forensic laboratories and say, well, we have 100 items that are stored in the database, you have 100 items, and there are many labs that store hundreds of items, so in total we have 10,000 of items in our database. Well, that gives a good basis for statistical processing. We might be able to link cases, so if a burglar is working in the Netherlands, but also in Germany or Belgium, we might be able to link those cases. We might be able to have provenance in cases. So we find a trace somewhere here in the Netherlands, and the police asks us, well, what is this? There's a single fiber. There's a single fiber here, and we have no clue what it is. And we look in the database, and well, we have one single fiber that's also in the database, and it was acquired. The data was acquired in Portugal, but it was from an Adidas or a Puma jacket. Well, we have real information on the provenance, on the origin of things. So loads of opportunities there, but also challenges. And well, you can think of those challenges. Of course, privacy issues. If you have a single database and we store items from the Netherlands, but also from France and from Israel, from Portugal, from Lithuania. Of course, if you store all the case file numbers and the names of the suspects, the name of the crime scenes, we have terrible privacy issues. We will not be allowed by our directives by our countries, by our prosecutors, to store all those data in a single database. That will not be allowed. So we have to be very careful about the design of a database so that the relevant things are in there, but case-related information is not in the database. It's possible, but we have to be very, very careful from the start. So with all those challenges, with all those opportunities, we designed this process, which we called the shuttle process. And these are the different tools. So the orange box is what we call the toolbox, the shuttle toolbox. And within that orange toolbox, there are the different tools. And there's a debate if there are 4 or 5 tools. That's the way you count it. First tool is the tape lift. What I explained, we need a tape that's clear, that's microscopically clear, so that we can use the tape for recovery of traces, but also for high magnification microscopy. Of course, we need a microscope. We need a microscope that works in an automated fashion. We need tools to process the images that are acquired during the microscopy. And we might choose to combine the last two items, to combine the last 2 tools and say, well, we need the database, but not only the database, but also queries or ways to search through those databases to represent the data that's stored in the database in a way that's useful for the forensic laboratories. So these are the tools that we store in the tools in the Shuttle toolkit. Well, and based on this toolkit, on this representation, we made a number of requirements. I'll talk about them in a minute. But before I go into the details, and there's a lot of conversations now. No, nothing important. First, on the schedule we made for the requirements. For every requirement, we will present specifications. So requirement, as we use it in the Shuttle Consortium, is a description, a very short functional description. So it's nothing with very technical implementation yet. No, it's just a requirement. It's just a description of things that we need. And the more specific things, the more detailed things are introduced as specifications. So every requirement that we set implies a number of specifications that will also be set. And those specifications will make up the requirement. And with every specification, we will also provide a way to validate and verify the specification. So we will not only tell you as the suppliers, this is what we need, this is our requirement, and this is specs, but we'll also tell you, once you give us the solutions, once you'll give us our toolbox, this is the way that we're going to test it. So that's known information for you, so you can maybe mimic those tests, do the tests yourself already, so that you can have quite a good idea how your toolkit will behave in our tests later on. And optimally, you can use those test descriptions to optimize your system even before we see it. That's of course our intention with that. For every requirement, we'll also provide you with some background, some more wordy interpretation. What do we need, or what do we intend with this requirement? And give you some references. Well, this work has been done before. You could have a look there to get the state-of-the-art information. So this is the build up of the requirements. And there's one other very important issue, and that's that requirement and specification cannot tell you the whole truth. They're part of the truth. Technical specifications are very important. We tell you, well, we need a system that needs to have this and this and this specifications. And you give us a system that has these specifications, but it might still be that the solution is not right. It's according to the specification, but it's just not right. It's completely user unfriendly. It's completely non-flexible. There are so many things that could prevent the system from working in a routine environment. So we set a number of those what we call KPIs. Might be that the name is changed, but we set a number of those issues that are those aspects that are more subjective, very important, but subjective ways to evaluate the system. So, in fact, all the technical stuff is seen as one KPI. It's the main KPI, the technical excellence. So we set specifications and we require that the system follows the specification. That's what we call the technical excellence. But other things that are important is robustness. We cannot have a system. We want Shuttle to be a toolkit that will be an international forensic standard. That's quite high in aim, but that's what we intend. We want a new international standard for trace investigation. So if we have a machine that breaks down every minute, needs supplier intervention once a week, it will never be a system. So robustness is an issue. Flexible. Of course, a system might be tuned for 80% of the cases, but there are always things that are just a little bit different than the routine. Can we use the toolkit as well for these systems? It must be user-friendly. There are a number of people that develop the toolkit, but of course those will not be the people that use the toolkit on a daily basis. So it has to be user-friendly or it will not be used, etc., etc. So we set a number of KPIs, things that are important. The technical excellence will evaluate them as objective as possible. Just set specifications, this is the test, and you'll fail, you'll pass, or you'll get a score. That's all clear and all objective. The other things will involve, the details are not yet sure, but the other things will involve a subjective verdict by the users. So requirements, these are very much according to the tools that I said. So there's a requirement for every tool. And there's 6 requirements. There will, as far as we know now, be 6 requirements. And the first one is the tape system. We need a tape system that recovers traces. What I told you before, the tape system should be compatible with high resolution, high magnification microscopy. We extended that requirement a bit, and we said it should be compatible with further analysis, because there's, of course, microscopy, but there's also DNA analysis. We might have elemental analysis by EDX or by ICP-MS, or we might have FDR, and this will not be possible within the shuttle system. But we need a tape system that is compatible. So might either be within the tape, or there might be ways to isolate traces from the tape so that we can subject them to further analysis. So the microscopy is part of the second requirement, but this is extended a little bit. The third one is the automated microscope. Various illumination modes. We need a image processing system, and we describe that quite broadly. So in a way that it converts the acquired images to information. 5 is the database thing. So they're combined. The database setup and the data representation. So the extraction, the queries of the database, they are combined in the 5th toolkit. In the 5th requirement, it stores and queries data and helps in interpretation. So that's the main thing, of course. The queries and the storage should be such that it really helps the forensic laboratory. And of course, there are always things that cannot be easily put into one of these categories. So we made an extra, the 6th one, the overall shuttle toolkit requirements, with some additional things. So these are the main things for the requirements. I forgot one slide. Oop, where am I? There's a big nota bene. The specifications are not completely complete yet. We are still working on this finalization. The big lines should be stable. They should be as I present them in a minute, but details might be changed. So the toolkit provides a tape system to recover traces. Well, we think as a consortium this is quite an easy requirement, because many of the current tapes, even if you buy tape from the normal DIY store or from a office store, most tapes are suitable to recover traces. So this is not such a very harsh requirement, but still it's good to include it, because if people come up with things that do not suffice, then we should have a way to say, well, this is not okay. So it is a requirement, but we don't think it's such a harsh one. Many current tapes can recover traces efficiently. And of course, with tapes, it will be important that the tapes are flexible, that we can use them to recover traces from many things. Some might be garments, but might also be knives, might be tabletops, might be bus seats, might be things that are a bit have a curved surface. It needn't be too flimsy, because people who work in forensic basically always wear gloves when working with traces. So we should be able to recover things while wearing gloves. Sorry for that. So this is requirement 1. Going to requirement 2, we need a tape that allows further analysis of the recovered traces, and the main thing there is the conventional microscopy. That's the single most important item. But also it would be nice if we could have a Raman system that can analyze traces that are still in the tape, or MSP, the microspectrometry, measure a complete spectrum of a trace that is in the tape. Of course, not every analysis is possible while things are still in the tape. Infrared microscopy, I think, will never be possible with an item with a trace that is still in the tape. I might be wrong, but I can't foresee it. So there's also a need to be able to isolate traces from the tape. That should be easy. We'll test that with FTIR, ICP-MS and DNA, especially blood or hairs if they're on the tape. And the microscope observes blood. We say, well, we know there's blood. It's of course a pity if you cannot tell whose blood it is. So there will be extra tests to see, well, if there's blood on the tape, can we still do the DNA analysis so that we can identify the person who shedded the blood. The requirement, there's a mistake in the sheet. I didn't remove it, was there on the last thing. But at least there will be a microscope. We will require a microscope here. And the microscope should have various illumination modes. And those illumination modes have to do, of course, with discrimination. We are always very interested in discriminating different things. So if we have a red fiber and a purple red fiber, we should be able to discriminate those things. We would like the microscope, the image processing tools, to be able to recognize those things and to discriminate them. It's here said that the space resolution should be 2 microns or better. That's a mistake. Sorry for that. The number should be the pixel size. So the effective pixel size should be 2 micrometers or better. And it might be that a little bit bigger, is 3 or 4, might be allowed as well. This is basically the traces that we look at are normally 8 microns, 10 microns, 20 microns. That's about the edge. So we would like to have for every trace a number of pixels. So we should be in the order of 2 microns pixel size. So not, as it said here, spatial resolution, but pixel size, effective pixel size. The illumination modes, well, the transmission is the standard nowadays. Reflection would be very useful for a number of samples. For example, paints. Paints, they scatter a lot, so to effectively observe paints, you might need reflectance. Fluorescence is used a lot in forensic science as well. Polarization is a difficult one because of the orientation that cannot be changed in tapes. We think it is possible to make the polarization microscopy orientation independent. Polarization would really help in identifying materials. So sand and glass have different polarization. Otherwise, the particles, the microtraces consisting of sand and glass, might be quite similar. Different kind of fibers might be discriminated using polarization. Different kind of crystals, different kind of drugs might be discriminated using polarization. So we will require a polarization facility there. And we would really like some spectrometric imaging so that the color description is very accurately. The specific spectral resolution is not yet decided upon, estimated to be about 5 to 10 nanometers. That will be the resolution. What am I? Requirement 4. The toolkit will convert acquired images to information. We will require it to be a solution that consists of two parts, and one is the GUI, the graphical user interface, and one is the actual algorithm, which contains a typo here. Sorry for that. This was specifically made because the advances, the current state of the art in image processing, is so speedy at the moment. What's new today is all tomorrow, and it's ancient in a week. So we would really hate if we have a shuttle toolkit, we work on it for 4 years, so you work on it for 4 years, and in 5 years it's completely overtaken by new technology. So what we would really like is a well-working graphical user interface. So open images, browse through images, maybe save images if needed, store things in a database, open whatever, a graphical user interface, and then we say, well, this is the image and our set of images, and we put it towards an algorithm that's a separate kind of part of the solution. That algorithm makes the identification, classification of the different traces and gives back the classification of the different traces to the graphical user interface. And we'll require that the algorithm can be swapped. So we'll require that the suppliers provide an algorithm, but also that there are descriptions. If I want to make an additional algorithm, that should be feasible. So there should be a basic algorithm that the suppliers supply, discriminating glass, discriminating sand, discriminating blood, fibers, whatever, or whatever things they deem relevant there. But it might be very well possible that if my lab is very specialized in animal hairs, that I design another algorithm that can discriminate cats and dogs and guinea pigs, all those kind of different animals. So there will be a need for other algorithms, and maybe in artificial intelligence there will be new solutions there. So all kind of possibilities, and we thought the best way to approach those would be a separation between graphical user interface and an algorithm that's built into the system as a plugin, so that different plugins can be developed later. We also require that specify that different traces can be discriminated and visualized. So we want to have our image that was acquired by the microscope with an overlay of, well, where did the system find glass? So that we can go back to the tapes and say, well, this is the position, these are the coordinates where you can expect glass. So the output can be visual, also as a table. This is of course the basis. Something that we expect is, well, we have trace, we number the traces, trace 1, 2, 3. There might be coordinates, might be single coordinate, but also a list of coordinates if traces are a bit bigger than a number of pixels. There will be the properties. We analyze the trace. What are the properties? What's the transmission spectrum? What's the reflection image? What's the polarization information? And we go to the algorithm, come back and say, this trace is classified as blood. Number 1 is classified as blood. Number 2 is classified as a fiber. There's also the number 3 is here unknown. That's the very important bit that will be specified. Traces that are unknown, if the classifier says, well, I have no clue what this is, it should tell us that it has no clue what it is. Of course, the computer always has a best opportunity, but if it's below a certain threshold, it should tell us, well, I have no clue. Look at it personally. Database. The toolkit stores and queries data that helps in interpretation. There will be 2 bits again. The database structure itself. Within the consortium, there's already quite a bit of research into databases, and we'll provide the current status of our research that you can help. You're not obliged to use that, but you're welcome to build on the fundament that's already there. We will require that the data that's acquired with the microscope can be linked to the data that's acquired by different systems. So it's no use to make a database that's only suitable for shuttle data. We'll require that also microscopy, MSP, things can be included there. We'll set specifications on the size. Of course, there's no use in having a database that's full when 3 data sets are measured. That's no use. So we set specifications on the size. We'll set specifications on exchange collaborations. We'll specify that it can be installed in different computers. So there's not a single installation to which we all should have access. We hope that will be the case in a couple of years, but for now, that's not possible. We will not get the technical specification, the technical opportunities to all access the same database. Forensic labs normally have quite a strict computer system, and it will not be possible to just access everything and upload your data to a central server somewhere in Europe. So we'll require local installations, but also the possibility to exchange. So we have a set of data in one database. Can we extract it and put it into another database? And we'll specify a number of representations. We call them representations. And that's called a number of extractions, queries. How can we visualize our data? So there's one tape visualized at the bottom. And I should be able to ask the database, well, give me this tape, an image of this tape, and notify us, set in this tape marks on all places where you find glass. So in this case you put red circles, so there are 5 pieces of glass in this tape, or at least the Shuttle Toolkit identifies 5 pieces of glass in this tape. Requirement 6, so that's the overall kind of things that do not really fit into a single requirement that we talked about before. There will be a number of things there, and the most important there is the quality assurance traceability. And that's directly to do with the relation to the expert. So most forensic labs are on a quality system, ISO 17025 or something like that. Most of them have experienced experts, and well, both should trust the system. If we want to use the system in an accredited lab, it should be validated. If the experts trust the machine, he should be able to check every step it makes. So that's what we call traceability, and basically it means that if I get an extract from the database, something like this, the computer tells me where all the glass is. If I get an extract like this, I should be able to go back to image processing procedures and ask the computer, well, which algorithm did you use to classify these traces? I should be able to go back to the images, show me an image of this specific trace. I should be able to go back to the original tapes and say, well, this is the coordinate I found. I should be able to check and maybe isolate this piece of glass. So that's what we call the traceability. We should be able to check every step of the process. Well, the other bit is a very difficult one, modularity and integration, because those are completely opposite things. The modularity, well, we have 5 tools in our toolkit, and we discussed these separately, and it would be nice if they could be used separately. So if you have a tape and we have a case in which the microscope cannot be used, it would still be useful to use the tapes. If you have a user interface for an algorithm, it should be very nice if you could also upload images that have been acquired with another microscope. If you have a database, it should be very nice if you could also store data that have been acquired with another system. So it should be so nice if you could use every tool as a module, and also make it interact with other things that happen in the forensic lab. But also, of course, people have to use the Shuttle toolkit, and they want to experience a unity. They want an integrated system. So there's a balance there. Of course, this has to do with user friendliness. People that work day in, day out with a system like this, they should be trained well, of course, but still they expect that things work well, that things work integrated, that things work smoothly together. I think this will be very difficult to optimize this, but there will be specifications that set certain limits on modularity. There will be specifications that set limits on the integration. There will be requirements on the size of tapes. We expect that the most limiting thing will there be the microscope, but we didn't include it in the specification of the microscope because there are other things. It might be that the microscope we finally obtain is very fast, but that the image processing is very slow. So you can analyze a tape in 1 hour, but the image processing takes 3 days. And of course that is, then the system as a whole is slow as well. So that's why we put it on an overall requirement. Both the size of the tapes, the size and the speed. I mix up 2 things, but those are valid for both the size and the tapes of the size and the speed of the system. So size of tapes, we will specify preferably up to A4. So that's about 20 by 30 centimeters. If that's really not possible, we might do with A5 as well. That will probably mean that tapes are cut, and we'll have to analyze both of the things. But optimally, A4 size would really be helpful. And the speed, we consider the specification quite harsh, so we do not expect a system that finishes a tape within 10 minutes. That's just not possible. On the other hand, it will not be useful if we have to wait for 1 week for a single tape. So we'll probably specify something in the order of a couple of hours. So if you go to the A4 size tape, we'll specify that a number of tapes can be done overnight, and a number of extra tapes can be done in 24 hours. So that leaves a number of hours per tape. So this will still be very fast. We're really a state-of-the-art solution for that. Hopefully it will be possible. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I'll switch on the camera again. I'm not sure if you are allowed to talk to me.
No, I mean, maybe if you want to ask some questions, you can, I'm talking about the audience, maybe please ask your questions. We can have some time to deal with them from Jap's presentation. And then we will move to the next presentation by Maria about the tendering process. So please use the chat if you want to ask any question to Jap. And if not, Maria will jump on the screen. Okay, so we have a question. Stemmer is a component.
Yeah, I'm looking at the conversation, and there's one asks a question from Harm Hanekamp, and he says, Stemmer is a component supplier. What do you expect from us? There will be more on that by Maria in a minute. In short, I try not to spoil Maria's presentation, but in short, I can maybe say a few words on that. We, as a consortium, have chosen the lazy way. We could, of course, ask for modules, ask for components, integrate them ourselves. But we said, no, if we do that, we will be responsible ourselves for the integration. We will try to outsource that bit as well. So, Stemmer is a component supplier, says in the question. If Stemmer wants to be involved in the shuttle process, and they say, well, we don't do tapes. I know Stemmer a little bit. They do optical stuff. We don't do tapes, or we don't do image processing. Then they can't supply all of the whole toolkit. So they need to join up with other suppliers that can supply the other bits that Stemmer cannot do. Might be in two ways. They might form a consortium and say, well, we try to find a contract as a consortium. Or it might be that Stemmer says, well, I take the opportunity, I'll just go into the contract myself, and if I cannot make something, I'll buy it. I'll get it from other sources. So a single component supplier basically cannot be involved here in itself. It should join a consortium. It should join other companies to provide basically the full toolkit. Patrick Vito asks, do you have already contacts with potential suppliers? Yes, we do. That's part of our project, is the open market consultation, as we sit here and as we've been in France last month or 2 months ago. Yes, those are our contacts with suppliers. There's also the RFI, request for information, on our website. Those are the contacts. We do not have any obligations yet. We do not say to manufacturers or to suppliers, well, there's a very good chance that you will be involved. No, there will be public tenders. Maria will talk on that better. There will be tenders, there will be open procedures. We do not have yet potential suppliers. There are, of course, potential suppliers. We do not have preferred suppliers yet. We do not have any appointments yet with how to call that? We do not have any contracts yet. We do not have any preference yet. So there are potential suppliers, but there's nothing fixed yet. For this kind of PCP procedures, the European Union requests a completely open procedure, and that's what we stick to. That's what we intend to do.
Okay, so good evening to everyone. My name is Campa Maria, and me and Mrs. Eleni Ilianou, on behalf of the Contracting Authority, we will present you the tendering process. Let's start with the presentation topics. First of all, we will talk about the theoretical background of the innovation procurement. The second topic will cover the procurement strategy that will be followed under the SHUTTLE project. Moving on, we have the tender process and the evaluation process, the eligibility, and we conclude our presentation with the legal framework for the whole procedure. Sorry. So let's start with the theoretical background of innovation procurement. First of all, we have two types of innovation procurement. The first one is the pre-commercial procurement. like a shuttle project. Pre-commercial procurement is about purchase of research and development services by the public sector. It is not concerned with the procurement of products or services that already exist in the market, but it focuses on the R&D phase, which involves solutions exploration and design and prototyping up to the original development of a limited volume of the first product or services. The second type is the public procurement of innovative solutions. It is the integration of innovative solutions available in the market into operational deployment. It does not concern procurement of R&D services like PCP. It can be used following a PCP or directly. And public procurers act as the first buyers of the innovative commercial and solution or goods close to the market, innovative goods. So, in the key requirement for progressing into a PCP is that no solution already exists in the market to meet the procurer needs. There is an identified public need, and a challenge is set to the market. The main features of the pre-commercial procurement, the first one is that it concerns a radical innovation. There is no available solution, meaning that there is not available solution in or close to the market. Different competing potential solutions exist, but still there is a need for R&D to do risk and compare technological alternative or approaches. There's no possibility to fix the solution requirements. There is R&D is needed or to proceed to large-scale deployment. Procurer wants to induce step change in market, and the PCP procurement is accepted from public EU public procurement directives, WTO procurement agreement, and the funding rate is usually 90%. For the main features now from the public procurement of innovative solutions is that mature technical solutions are close to the market. Incremental innovation is needed or non-R&D innovation. There is no need for R&D procurement. Suppliers could provide solutions if the market would express clear requirements and sufficient demand to purchase. The public sector acts as the first buyer and provides a seal of approval for the innovative solution. And finally, it is not accepted from EU procurement directives. EU remedies directives are also applicable here. WTO, GPA, and funding rate is 35%. So the process outline in the procurement strategy. Okay. We have phase 0, which is the curiosity-driven research. In the PCP projects, we have 3 phases. The first phase is the solution design. The second phase concerns the prototype development, while the third phase is the original development and testing of limited volume of first products. And in the PPI procurement, we have, let's say, the fourth phase, which concerns the deployment of commercial volumes of end products. To be more specific about the process outline, first of all, we have the needs identification and assessment. The steps here are the first one that we identify the unmet need or the set of needs. The consortium conduct a prior art analysis. There is an investigation regarding the IPRs, the regulation, the standardization and certification. And finally, the consortium validates the identified needs and builds a business case. The consortium, SHUTTLE consortium, now is in the open market consultation period, where the steps are the notification of the open market consultation via the publication of a PIN. In this step also there's consulting with other public authorities, the prior definition of requirements and procurement outline, and an open market consultation workshop which helps the consortium to finalize the tender documentation. The next step is the publication of the contract notice. This marks the start of the tendering process. It raises awareness towards the PCP. It will allow enough time prior to the tendering process, and the use of standard template provided by the European Commission will be used. The fourth step is the request for tenders, and it will include the project description, a project plan, methodology, and team from the contractors, a commercialization plan, and a price incorporating the IPR dimension. And the final step is the selection of the R&D providers and awarding of the framework agreement. Open bids will be received within the deadline. The evaluation of the tender, the bidders will be against exclusion and selection criteria, and also against award criteria. And the final step here is the awarding of the framework agreement and the phase contracts to the selected contractors. So to move on to more detail in the phases of a pre-commercial procurement, first one, as we said before, is phase one, which concerns the solution design. The key actions are R&D providers will be engaged in the design of the potential solutions and verify the technical, economic and organizational feasibility of the proposals in order to address the PCP challenge defined in the pre-tendering phase. Each of these R&D providers will be requested to deliver the outputs of their work with an end-of-phase report 1, incorporating all activities of the phase as well as a presentation of the relative results. Also, in phase 1, a business commercialization plan will also be requested. The contracting authority will assess the results that were mentioned before, and upon indication of a satisfactory completion, it will provide a recommendation regarding their adequacy for payment purposes. Also, the contracting board will assess which R&D providers have successfully completed the current phase, and thus they are eligible for bidding towards the next phase, phase 2. And upon successful completion of the evaluation process, the board will proceed to the awarding of phase 2 contracts. In phase 2, which concerns the prototype development, the key actions are that the R&D providers will be engaged in the development of a prototype and will subsequently test the said prototype in lab conditions. The testing process will take place in either the provider's or the procurer's lab as selected by the procurer. Each of the participating R&D providers will be requested by the hosting procurers to deliver the outputs of their work along with an end of phase 2 report, incorporating all the activities in this specific phase, and in this, along with a presentation of the relative results. As similarly with phase 1, the contracting board will assess the results, and upon indication of satisfactory completion will provide recommendation regarding their adequacy for payment purposes. Also, the contracting board will assess which R&D providers have successfully completed the phase 2 and are eligible to bid towards phase 3. And finally, upon successful completion of the evaluation, the contracting board will proceed with the awarding of phase 3 contracts. So, in the last phase 3, which concerns the development and testing of a limited set of products, The key actions are, first of all, the successful phase 2 R&D providers will produce an initial limited set of product services, and after testing by the procurer in relevant operational conditions, let's say, field testing results will be incorporated in the updating the product, producing a final limited set suitable for large-scale production following the PCP. It is not in the scope of the PCP to produce, let's say, to have a large-scale production. Each of the participating R&D providers will be requested by the hosting procurers to deliver the outputs of their work along with an end of phase 3 report that will summarize all the activities of the phase as well as a presentation of the relative results. The Pro-Contracting Board will also assess the results of Phase 3 and provide recommendation regarding the adequacy for payment purposes. And finally, the same board will also assess which R&D providers has successfully completed the current phase. Moving on to the second topic of the presentation regarding the procurement strategy of SHUTTLE project. Let's start with indicative timeline for the tendering process. First of all, the project started in May 2018. The publication of the prior information notice was in November 2018. We had an open market consultation event in January 2019 in Paris. And it is expected to have a contract notice in 2 months in May 2018. The tendering process will continue until October 2021, where at the end of the tendering process we will have two toolkits validated and tested. So, for the procurement methodology, SHUTTLE project confirms that the procurement methodology will be implemented in compliance with the specific requirements for the implementation of Horizon 2020 co-founded PCPs and with a model of grant agreement for PCP actions following the below steps. The first step, prepare the common tender specification based on a hybrid model, which will take into consideration the findings of the open market consultation and the buyers group set of common tender specification and conditions of participation to the procurement. The formulation of the tender ensures that all the solutions discussed will be covered in the final specifications. The second step, a contract notice will be published by the contracting authority in the official journal of the European Union. The aforementioned document will be in English, specifying that the procurement concerns a pre-commercial procurement, that it is exempted from Directive 24 of 2014 and 81 of 2009, and indicating the way that potential tenderers can take part in the request for tenders. This contract notice will be promoted and advertised widely using Horizon 2020 Innovation Procurement Newsletter, Horizon 2020 Internet site, national contact points, and of course, SHUTTLE website. According to the tender rules and procedures, in case of an open public procurement procedure, the minimum time limit for submission of tenders is 35 days from the publication date of the contract notice. The selected approach for ensuring effective timely evaluation of proposal in contracting will be stated in the project term of reference. The third step includes that all the necessary tendering documentation will be made public according to the plan and the procedures defined. A request for tenders will be published, inviting all interested economic operators to participate in the tendering process. This request for tenders takes into consideration the finding of the open market consultation and describes the common challenge using functional and performance-based specifications and being in line with the requirements defined in phase 0 of the project. The request for tenders describes also the process for the evaluation and selection of the tenders for the first PCP phase. It also includes the intermediate evaluation for its following PCP phase, the minimum requirements that subcontractor must comply with during the PCP, and the arrangements for the IPRs, confidentiality, publicity, the rules on applicable law, and dispute settlement. Before the deadline to deliver the proposal, the consortium will be engaged in order to support all the potential contractors by answering questions related to the call for tender. For this reason, in the SHUTTLE website, there is a QA form that it is available, but that it is already available. The fourth step is the evaluation and ranking of the tenders according to the best value for money criteria and ensuring that the price corresponds to market conditions. The fifth step is the subcontracting awards to a minimum of 4 tenderers that will be sufficiently evaluated from the technical and financial perspective in the previous step. After that, the framework agreements, each selected tenderer will sign one agreement. The framework agreements will be signed between the contracting authority and the selected tenderers, setting the terms and the conditions. And the final step is that the contract award notice will be published within 48 days after the conclusion of the framework agreement by the contracting authority in the official journal of the European Union. Moving on to the tender process and the evaluation. So, the common evaluation criteria methodology that will be used has the following steps. First of all is the definition of the exclusion criteria based on the provisions in the EU procurement directives. The second step is the definition of the selection criteria in compliance with the treaty principles, which are primarily related to the suitability of the bidders to perform the professional activity, the economic and financial standing of the bidder, and the technical and professional ability. In the third step, in addition to the price, the definition of the award criteria will take place in this step in compliance with the treaty principles of equal treatment and transparency. This includes, for example, criteria based on the quality, impact, and implementation of the submitted proposals. The quality part could refer to the ability to address the challenge, the novelty of the proposed solution approach, and the technological soundness of the solution concept. Regarding the impact part, it could refer to the added value to the society or economy, or the soundness of the commercialization plan. While the implementation part, it could refer to the quality or effectiveness of the proposed R&D work plan and resource allocation. In the tendering bodies that exist in the Shuttle project, first of all is the contracting authority, which is the Center for Security Studies, CEMEA. The second one is the contracting board, which consists of the Shuttle forensic laboratories with the contracting authority. The same is for the technical board. And finally, there is the CEMEA Shuttle procurement board. So, the tender procedure and evaluation. In the Shuttle project, the open procedure has been adopted. The tendering process will be conducted in one stage that will include the tender solvency and the financial and technical evaluation, along with the award of the contracts. The term of reference document will be published with all the necessary information in order for the industry to understand the scope of the tender. Also, the same document will define in detail the operational validation process, the requirements, the specifications, the technical and economic criteria that will be used in order to evaluate the tenders, in order to extract the most economically advantageous ones on the best price-quality ratio. The term of reference is assumed as the principal document during the tender, and all its provisions shall remain fully valid and applicable during the whole tender process, unless it is otherwise stated. The economic operators will submit a request to participate containing all the information requested in the tender document. The exclusion grounds will allow the consortium to exclude candidates from participation in case that the economic operator have been subject of a conviction by final judgment for the reasons referred to the selection criteria. And the KEMEA Shuttle Procurement Board will evaluate the solvency documents of the participants, and then it will submit its opinion to the contracting board for the final decision. So, the technical evaluation process of the tenders will be carried out by the relevant committees and will result in a unique and joint evaluation report based on consensus. Those tenders will exceed exceed the maximum amount allowed for the financial tender shall not be taken into consideration. The contracting authority may request justification by those tenderers that offer an extremely low financial tender. The contracts will be awarded to the tenders showing the best value for money, that is to say, to the tender offering the best price-quality ratio using scoring model, which includes evaluation criteria with automatic evaluation and evaluation criteria based on the value judgment. Financial evaluation will be done using criteria which are automatically evaluable, and technical evaluation will be done following criteria based on value judgment. If the tenders fail to provide the documentation needed on any of these award criteria or do not fulfill all the requirements, their proposal will not be assessed with respect to the criteria in question. The maximum scoring obtained after the proposal evaluation will be 100 points, where the 20% points correspond to the financial proposal and the 80% points correspond to the technical proposal. And below you can see the scoring model that will be used. So now I may pass the floor to Mrs. Lianou to continue with the last two presentation topics.
Of course, we would like to highlight that the procedure is open and the treaties of equal treatment, the principle of equal treatment is, of course, applied. So tenders may submit an offer as a single entity or in collaboration with others, as joint tenders or in terms of subcontracting. Or of course, any potential bidder could combine the two approaches. So more incomplete, every natural person residing in one of the following countries, countries of the European Union, of European Economic Area member states, Horizon 2020 associated countries having signed a bilateral agreement with the European Union specifically on security procedures for exchanging and protecting classified information. And of course, legal entities established under the law of the same countries as we mentioned above. That is to say, European Union and the European Economic Area member states and the Horizon 2020 associated countries. And of course, also entitled to participate are groups of economic operators of the above natural persons or legal entities submitting, as we said, a joint tender. Tenders, on the other hand, will be excluded if they fall within one of the following categories, categories that are related to the structure of groups of operators, where, for example, a single economic operator or affiliated entities participating within more than one group of operators, or both, a single tenderer and a member of a group of operators, or where a single economic operator or affiliated entity has already participated as, for example, a subcontractor or partner in Shuttle project. When we mention affiliated entity, it means an legal entity directly or indirectly controlled by or under common control with that economic operator, or of course it's a subsidiary, for so long as this control lasts. Tenderers will also be excluded when we as contracting authority have sufficiently indications that the economic operator has entered into agreements with other economic operators aiming at distorting competition, where a conflict of interest, as we said above, cannot be effectively remediated or by other less intrusive measures, where a distortion of competition from the prior involvement of economic operators in the preparation of the procurement procedure cannot be also remediated by other less instructive measures. And of course, when where the economic operator has shown significant or persistent deficiencies in the performance of a substantive requirement under not, of course, this contract, but under a prior public contract. Other exclusion grounds, and all these grounds are, of course, indicative. We may add more, but everything is depending on how we will deal with the exclusion grounds as set by the procurement directives. Where the economic operator has been guilty of serious misrepresentation in supplying the information required for the verification of the absence of grounds for exclusion or the fulfillment of the selection criteria. Also, where the economic operator has undertaken to unduly influence the decision-making process of the contracting authority to obtain confidential information that may confer upon it undue advantages in the procurement procedure, or to provide misleading information that may have a material influence on decisions concerning exclusion, selection, or award. Failure to obtain and maintain relevant licensing or membership of an appropriate trading or professional organization where required by law is also an exclusion criteria. Failure to provide information required or providing inaccurate, misleading information when participating in procurement exercise, and failure to fulfill obligations related to payment of social security contributions and or taxes. As I mentioned before, beyond the eligibility and exclusion criteria outlined above, details will be set to the set of selection award criteria will be also foreseen and will be in detail described in our call for tenders, in our terms of reference, taking, of course, into consideration the three PCP phases. Moving to the indicative selection criteria, economic operators must have the capacity, tools, and material equipment to carry out, of course, research and lab prototyping, produce and supply a limited set of first products or services, and be able to demonstrate that these products or services are suitable for production or supply in quantity, and to quality standards defined by CHEMEA and the other procurers. The financial organization structures to manage, exploit, and transfer or sell the results of the PCP, and generate revenue by marketing commercial applications of the results. And of course, economic operators must have an economic and financial capacity to complete the project. When potential bidders will be invited to submit their tender, they will At first phase, they will only have to submit the European Single Procurement Document, which is, as we may know, a self-declaration of the financial status, abilities, and stability for a public procurement procedure, which more or less contains all the information needed and requested, as we mentioned above. What is really interesting and different from usual public procurement for PCPs is how a PCP deals with IPRs, intellectual property rights. As the Shuttle Consortium has already decided, Shuttle proposes an IPR approach which is fully aligned, of course, with the fundamental principles of the PCP. The partners will therefore set up the suitable mechanism that will allow sharing risk and benefits between the contracting authority and the PCP contractors. Those mechanisms will be based on the following principles. On one hand, the ownership rights of IPRs generated by a supplier during the contract will be assigned and remain to that supplier, and all consortium members and the institutions, of course, of the European Union, since Shuttle is a co-financed project, will be assigned a worldwide free and non-exclusive license to use the R&D results for internal use. This license will be irrevocable. Moreover, in the call for tenders and also in the framework agreement that will be signed between the lead procurer, the procurers, and the contractors, a callback provision will ensure. A callback provision will be set and will ensure that ownership rights of the IPRs are not exploited, which are not exploited within 4 years after the finalization of the contract, will have to be returned to the consortium members. Any of the consortium members can request the contractors to offer licenses to third parties under, of course, fair and reasonable market conditions, with consideration of the rights of other third parties that will not accrue to the contractors. The price of the R&D services provided will be considered as a market price, which includes a financial compensation according to the market conditions compared to exclusive development price. The language that will govern the whole procedure will be, of course, English. Requests to participate and tenders must be written in English only. Deliverables must be written in English, of course, and any communication relating to either the tender procedure or the implementation of the contract must be carried out in English only. Moving on to a few slides on the legal framework. I don't want to say a lot of things. What I would like to highlight more is that on the basis of Procurement Directive 24 of 2014 and of the Directive 81 of 2009, this tender, the Shuttle PCP, falls out the scope of the application of the directives. But the Shuttle Consortium chose to adopt the following basic principles. Compliance, of course, with all general principles of EU public procurement law, mainly the principle of transparency, equal treatment, non-discrimination, proportionality, protection of free and undistorted competition, without strictly following the procedural obligations set forth by Procurement Directive. We try to have as much as publicity as possible. So we aim at the maximization of the publicity of the contract by advertising it in the official journal of the European Union, with a contradictory remark that the tender is not falling under the scope of Procurement Directive. exception of the tender from the scope also of the application of the Greek relevant legislation on public procurement, which is the law 4412 of 2016. As Maria mentioned before, our procurement is also accepting from WTO GPA, and we decided as consortium to follow and to adopt the open procedure so as to have an open process, open to all. And if a contractor claims that is unaware of any of the terms and conditions of the tender documents, as well as the annexes to the documents forming part thereof, this does not relieve him from the strict compliance with their obligations. The tender and dispute or claim arising during or in connection with the call for tenders is under the public procurement law and the Greek legislation. And the courts of Greece, as the procurement will be governed by the Greek law, the courts of Greece will have exclusive jurisdiction to settle any dispute or claim arising during the whole procedure. Of course, the provisions of the state aid framework are also governing our procedure, and also our procedure is designed in accordance with the provisions of the EC governing and providing all the provisions for the PCP. In particular, and has to be implemented according to the price paid for the relevant services that it has to fully reflect the market value of the benefits received by the public purchaser and the risk taken by the participating providers. The selection procedure is open, transparent, competitive, and non-discriminatory, and of course is based on objective selection and award criteria specified in advance in the bidding procedure. The arrangements of the contracts will describe all rights and obligations of the parties, including, as we mentioned before, IPR's provision, and will be, of course, available in due time to all potential bidders. The procurement does not give any of the PCP contractors any preferential treatment, the supply of commercial volumes of the final products or services to one of the public procurers or any other procurer in the member state concerned. So, leading to the closing this presentation, I would like to shortly highlight the benefits for potential bidders to participate in the SHUTTLE PCP, as of course in any pre-commercial procurement. First of all, a PCP is opening up to new markets, business opportunities for companies. Public procurement market accounts around, let's say, 3 trillion euros per year. It's a very big market with a huge potential that offers business opportunities to companies that are already in the security field, but also for companies active in other sectors that we are willing to expand and to find new activities there. Moreover, PCPs facilitate the participation of SMEs by enabling them to grow according to the gradual increase of the budget per phase. By the end of the SHUTTLE PCP, participant SMEs will be in a position to provide commercial volumes of the developed innovative solution, being set ready for a possible commercial rolling out of this solution to the market. On the other hand, PCPs are helping also larger market players bring products to the market, and they could also collaborate with SMEs, taking advantage of their creativity. As of the universities, they can participate as suppliers, enabling thus the commercialization of innovative solutions developed by their spin-offs. Moreover, it's important to note that demand-driven innovation through procurement offers the opportunity for innovation solutions to be commercialized faster than in cases where such a demand does not exist. What is more, as you can understand, through a PCP, companies are getting contracts and not grants, and suppliers are paid for the R&D services at market price, which is not the case for grants, where usually private entities are not paid at market price and surely at a percentage of less than 100%. As you know, SHUTTLE PCP is a cross-border joint procurement. That means that procurers from different EU member states are joining forces, creating economies of scale. This gives opportunities to business, to a cross-border growth, to expand and to find markets in other countries. What I would like also to highlight is that an important element of the PCP is that potential bidders, potential suppliers, companies are developing a solution for an existing public need. Private entities participating as suppliers in this PCP will have the opportunity to develop gradually, following the life cycle of innovation, an innovative solution to tackle a public need that will be throughoutly described in our tender documents. Given that this public is served by other public entities across Europe, this public need is served by other public entities across Europe. Participation in SHUTTLE PCP will open up business opportunities for these companies towards other public entities which are not participating in SHUTTLE Consortium as potential customers. Concluding our presentation, it's worthy to note that suppliers awarded a contract in the PCP are using this contract, will have the chance to use this contract as reference to other potential customers, public or private, that are sharing this specific need, not only at European, but also at international level. Thank you very much for your attention.
In the meantime, we've had some comments and questions in the chat. It seems like interest is being raised and interest to build a consortium to be able to answer the call for tender. So there was a question from Payan, which was actually also Lina's question. So maybe I will start with this question. Which kind of technical specifications do you send to the tenders supposed to be selected? Requirements and KPI presented us today do not constitute a solid and strong specification to work with. Does it exist another document more technical so that participant can see whether they can answer the call? And she says, I am in line with Payan's question. Do you need to partner with an engineering office having some specific skills as mechanical, electronical, IT, industrial design, or whatever? So I guess the idea is to see how to build the necessary competencies in order to answer the call for tender. I don't know who wants to answer that question. Maybe Eleni?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, did
okay.
you? Okay.
Yes, I could partly answer. I would say, first of all, that it's not us that we are looking for a partner. Every potential bidder, every company, or every person could network and find a partner through our matchmaking tool in order to form a consortium, or in order to submit the joint tender, or to be the subcontractor of another company for specific, let's say, parts of our procurement. So it's not us that we are looking for a partner. Every legal entity or every natural person have to try to network and jointly find a way to collaborate. As of the requirement, the specifications, as all our colleagues mentioned before, we are in a process that we are forming these specifications, and this is the reason why we have this open market consultation, in order to check with the market whether our need, what we are looking for, is something that is visible, is something that does not exist in the market, and it's something that can be done through R&D.
Maria sent a URL for matchmaking tool. So if you look at the chat, you will see that there is the tool that you can use for matchmaking. Maria, if you want to jump into present that tool, please feel free to do that. I would need also to talk about the comment from Daniela about image database. So she sent some information to be about the plugins and image processing softwares. So for the participants, maybe it's interesting to also take that information. Thank you very much, Daniela, for sharing that with us. And Maria, if you want to speak about the matchmaking form.
No, just I have sent it. It's a form that every company or everyone who wants to find partners in order to formulate a consortium can use. Also, I would like to mention that in the website there is a list of companies available for that are already searching for partnerships. So everyone who is interested in finding more partners can use this form and the list of companies in the Shuttle website.
There was a question from Andrew. Can companies from outside the EU, EEA, or H2020 associated countries be part of a tender as, for example, a supplier?
I think I could reply to this question. As we presented in our PowerPoint, entitled to participate either as one company or a single entity, or by submitting a joint tender or subcontracting, are companies that are established under the law of the countries having their of the following countries, and having their central administration or principal place of business or registered office in one of the following countries, as you mentioned, EU and member states, Horizon 2020 associated countries having signed a bilateral agreement with the EU on security procedures for exchanging and protecting classified information. So if I understand correctly your question, companies outside the EU or Horizon 2020 associated countries cannot be part of a tender.
But I will, if you want to raise some additional questions, please do so. I wanted just to broadcast the matchmaking form, just to show you. I hope you can see my screen right now. So this is on the Shuttle PCP EU website, and you see the matchmaking form. So please do not hesitate to get back to that after the webinar if you want to. You see you have also the list of companies to partner with. So this link can be sent to you also after the webinar.
Yeah, I think if I understand Andrew's question correctly, he wants to be involved in Shuttle, but he fears that since he's in England, the Brexit, which will probably come, will prevent him from joining. If I understand correctly, the English companies after Brexit, if Brexit will go on, and if England will not be part of the European Union, he will not be able to enter the bids as a supplier. but that will not prevent him, if I understand correctly, to act as a subcontractor. So if a European company will take the bid, be contracted, we as a shuttle consortium will not prevent that company from dealing with Andrew in England. If am I right there?
Just to say and to note that since we are a Horizon 2020 co-funded project, we have to follow and respect the rules as set by Horizon 2020. And this stage today, we don't have any guidance on that by Horizon 2020. Let's say managing authorities, the European Commission, for example. So we cannot really have an answer today, because today there is no result or any conclusion on how Horizon 2020 projects will have to deal with UK companies. So to be honest, the answer cannot be really finalized at this time. At this time.
A follow-up can be made with Andrew on this, I'm sure, with the consortium. Thank you very much. So if anybody else wants to raise a question, that is the time to do that. Or if also one of the speakers wants to add any addition to what was presented, please reactivate your camera and mic. In any case, I think it was very clear. Thank you very much for everybody for staying to the webinar. I think a lot of information was broadcasted. Let's start.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention and for attending to the webinar.
Thank you for your attention, everybody.